Hey, let's start looking at the magic equation of the MMM. So let's start with an analogy, right? Let's imagine we have cake. Yes, a cake, a really tasty cake. And what goes into this? Let's say flour, there's of course sugar, eggs, and baking powder. Of course, there's more things that go into making this really tasty, but let's imagine these are our core ingredients that go into this recipe. And similarly, we can think of this MMM model having these core ingredients that make up the final model. And that is what we want to understand. Because at the end of the day, our CFO might come up to us and ask, hey, our sales is up 3%. But the big question is, what caused this? Was it the marketing or the media spend? Or was it some kind of economical activity or something related to season? Now, at this point, without having any MMM models built, all we can do is guess and say, hey, this might be because of marketing and media spend. This might be due to economical activities and so on. But we don't want to stay in that place because we know there's an MMM model. And let's try and build this out and see if we'll be able to answer some of these questions because at the end of the day, we want to know where we can push more budget and where we can pull back more budget so that this 50% increase in sales hopefully goes up to 75% or even 100%. I mean, who wouldn't like sales up 100%, right? So if we think of this cake as our sales activity, so this was the 50% increase in sales, then flour can be the baseline sales, right? And the sugar in our recipe can be the marketing or media spend, and the eggs can be the economic activity, and the baking powder that we used in our cake recipe can be the seasonality. And similarly, you can add more and more terms, but you get the idea. So if we were to think of all of this, then the equation that we want for building our MMM model is actually very simple and straightforward. So we can simply write all of this as sales equals baseline plus media plus economic activity plus seasonality. So this is the core model, and any approach or any libraries that you find out there will use something like this under the hood. So let's put some numbers to this. So imagine our sales was up 5 million. So how can we break this down? Let's imagine the baseline sales was 2 million, and this is coming from all the organic activity and the brand impact, if you will. Then we have maybe $2.5 million from the marketing spend, the media spend, other things. And let's say we have 300K due to some economic condition, let's say Black Friday. And then the other 200K from seasonal activity like weekend sales, or it could just be an error term as well, right? So this is a practical example for a business that is generating 5 million in sales. And we can further add some notations to this. So let's call this baseline as beta 0, or for the sake of it, let's just call it coefficient. So this coefficient is going to represent the baseline. And then we have the media activity now. And again, for simplicity, let's say we have TV, we have digital, and maybe radio as well. And for each of these, we can add the coefficients as well. So this gets a coefficient over there, and this gets a coefficient as well, and this gets a coefficient as well. So yeah, just to be clear, they are multiplication operation, right? So these are all multiplication operation. I didn't have much space over there, but you get the idea. Next, we can have the other terms as well. So instead of economic activities, you can also call it external factors, and you can club everything together. So we have the economy, there's of course the competitors, and they can be weather as well. Like maybe if you have an ice cream store, then you probably sell a lot of ice creams during summer. So you have all these terms now. And again, all these will probably get their own coefficients as well. So we've added a few coefficients here to this term. And then finally, we also have the seasonality. So you get the idea of what we're doing here. So under seasonality, we can have things like holiday and trends. And again, everything has their own kind of coefficients as well. So this is what we've managed to break down our simple equation into smaller understandable chunks. And all we know is there are all these terms, but they also have a coefficient associated to it, which can be different for each of these. And those coefficients are what we're after, trying to find out how much of an impact each of these terms have towards the eventual sales that we were able to achieve. So finally, let's add some examples to this so that it becomes like a concrete example that we can take away from this 2 or 3 minutes that you've already spent on this video. So, okay, baseline sales. So this is the most straightforward. We already know that we have about 2 million in baseline sales, which means this is coming from word of mouth or organic or existing customer and purely your brand strength that you have so far, right? So if you were to not do any other activity, this is what your business will continue to generate for the next couple of months. So next, moving on to this over here, which is our media activities and marketing activities. Let's assign some coefficients, right? Let's say our TV has a coefficient of 2.5, and let's imagine we spent 400K on our TV ads. So that means we have 1 million in incremental revenue. And let's say for beta 2 term, let's imagine this is Google Ads. So let's say beta 2 for Google Ads, let's say the coefficient is 3. And imagine you spent around 200K, which means your incremental revenue from Google Ads is about 600K. And we can do the similar things for the external factors over here. Let's imagine there was a 10% GDP growth, right? So 10% GDP growth, which contributed to maybe 200K in additional sales revenue for your business. And a competitor, let's say, launched a product as well, which meant you lost 150K in revenue. But fortunately for your business, the ice cream business, there was a heat wave and you made 100K extra in revenue, right? So these are the terms that you really want to pay attention to. So these is the external factors. And similarly, if you come to holidays and trends, let's say Black Friday, Cyber Monday gave you an additional boost and you were able to generate 400K in sales. And then similarly, December time, Christmas, New Year time, you were able to generate additional revenue. And of course, there's like a yearly trend as well. So maybe there's a trend of 5% increase year over year in your business. So these are some of the terms that we're trying to generate, and we'll go through this mathematically and try to put all these coefficients in place so that we can assign strength to each. I know so far I've just been writing all these equations which are kind of confusing, but let me draw a visual that you'll probably find in most of the MMM reports. So if you're a visual person, hopefully this can solidify some of the things that we've seen so far. So this is what is a waterfall chart, right? And you'll see commonly in most of the MMM reports that you see out there. So all those terms that we just saw, we can put this in here. So let's say our baseline sales was 2 million. Again, if you remember, this was due to organic, word of mouth, so on. So this is our baseline sales. And then we have our media activity, which was about 2.5 million. And then we have the little two other terms like external factors and seasonality. So let's say this little thing over here is the economic activity. And then on top of that, we have another little one over here, which is maybe due to seasonality. So something like this, you'll commonly see in your MMM reports that you can get hold of whenever you do these MMM studies. But I also want to show you something which is really cool, published on the Meridian website, where we can see if we come down to the model specification, this is the kind of model that they use, right? So how cool is that? I mean, there's a lot of things happening over here. We haven't looked at ad stock and saturation and other things, but you'll see the coefficients over here, the beta terms, uh, and so on. So we are still on the right track to understanding all these MMM models. So tomorrow or in the next post, whenever I do that, we'll learn a bit more about these coefficient terms and what are the paths go into these MMM models. Until then, see you.